This was our biggest mistake. We did not realize how our people would react. As soon as they heard that women had been raped at Deir Yassin, Palestinians fled in terror. They ran away from all our villages.
In the next few months, over half the Arab population, 750,000 people, fled their homes in Palestine. Israel never allowed them back. The British did little to prevent the atrocities committed by both sides. As they prepared to leave, they washed their hands of the whole mess. At the United Nations, the Jews announced their plans.
Not later than May 16th next, a provisional Jewish government will commence to function in cooperation with the representatives of the United Nations then in Palestine.
The Jewish leadership sought political support abroad.
The U.S. State Department argued against it. Their first response was, no country, no state.
Ben-Gurion sent his close colleague Moshe Sharett to convince the Americans to recognize the proposed Jewish state. Sharett tried to persuade Secretary of State George Marshall, who was totally opposed to the idea.
Sharett explained that we have no other way than to proceed. This is a historic juncture. If we miss that, we may create a tragedy for future generations.
But President Truman surprised everyone with his strong support.
I was told by all these so-called experts that if it was done, it would involve the whole Near East in a war, and it would also involve the United States. Hitler had been murdering Jews right and left. I saw it, and I dream about it even to this day. The Jews needed some place where they could go. It was my attitude that the American government couldn't stand idly by while the victims of Hitler's madness were not allowed to build new lives.
Marshall was worried that war would break out.
We are in the midst of a very critical situation. We should, therefore, carefully avoid approaching international problems on an emotional basis.
He wanted to maintain good relations with the Arabs.
I was on the receiving end of Azam Pasha's impressions of his meeting with Marshall. And he was happy. I mean, he felt much more reassured about the Americans after having talked to Marshall than before. And we had the Saudis with us. They were our partners in this business.
2 days before the British left Palestine, Truman summoned Marshall to the White House. Clark Clifford was asked to support the case for a Jewish state.
General Marshall started off. The president listened attentively and then said, I would like now to hear from Clark. But as I spoke, I saw Marshall's face getting redder and redder. And when I finished, he exploded.
Marshall accused Truman of a transparent dodge to win the Jewish vote.
Clark Clifford did not disguise the fact that Marshall was raging mad. They don't need a state, they don't deserve a state, it isn't theirs. They've stolen that land. These were Marshall's words.
He turned to the president, said, I'm obliged, Mr. President, to tell you that if you should adopt the policy that is recommended by Clifford, I would be unable to vote for you in this coming election in November. Well, dead silence in the room. No one had ever heard anything like that. I had never heard anybody threaten the President of the United States in that manner.
Before Marshall could go any further, Truman ended the meeting.
I gathered my papers together, and the President said, well, that was tough as a cob.
Marshall said to Charette,